Money has a way of revealing people's true nature. In my family's case, it took exactly $47 million to show me who my parents really were. My name is Sophia Barrett, and until this morning, I was the family disappointment. The daughter who chose humanitarian work over the family business. The failure who spent her inheritance on building schools in developing countries instead of investing in luxury real estate, like my perfect younger brother, James. The massive oak doors of Harrison and Associates law firm felt heavier than usual as I walked into the conference room for what my parents had called an emergency family meeting. The message had been clear: attendance mandatory, no excuses. I knew what this was about. Grandpa Walter had passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving behind a business empire worth nearly $50 million. The Barrett Construction Company had been his life's work, built from nothing into one of the largest development firms on the East Coast. My parents, dressed in matching black, as if still in mourning, though I'd never seen them shed a real tear for Grandpa, sat at the head of the conference table. James lounged in an expensive suit, scrolling through his phone with affected boredom. "You're late," Mom said sharply, though I was 5 minutes early. "Traffic," I replied simply, taking my seat. Mr. Harrison, Grandpa's personal lawyer for 30 years, sat quietly at the other end of the table, a thick folder in front of him. Something in his expression made me pause. Was that a hint of satisfaction in his eyes? "Let's get this over with," Dad began, straightening his tie. "We all know why we're here. Dad's estate needs to be properly distributed to ensure the company's future success." James finally looked up from his phone. "Shouldn't take long. The company shares go to me, obviously. I'm the only one who's shown any business sense." I thought about the 3 failed ventures he'd launched with Grandpa's money, each one more disastrous than the last. But saying that would only start another argument about my own choices. "Exactly," Mom agreed, patting James's hand. "We need someone who understands the value of money, not someone who throws it away on charity." She spat the last word like it was poison. The memory of our last family dinner flooded back. I'd just returned from opening our 10th school in Rwanda, excited to share the photos of smiling children with their first books. Mom had walked out of the room. Dad had called it a waste of good money. "Which brings us to the point of this meeting," Dad continued. "Your grandfather's estate needs to go to someone who will preserve his legacy, someone who understands business." I sat quietly, wondering what Grandpa would think of this conversation. He'd never said much about my humanitarian work, but I remembered the small smile he'd get whenever I showed him pictures of our projects. "Failures don't deserve inheritance," Dad declared, his voice firm. Mom nodded in agreement, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. For the first time, I noticed he was holding back a smile. "Actually," he said, opening the folder, "the trust fund is in your daughter's name." The silence that followed was absolute. James's phone slipped from his hands, clattering on the expensive mahogany table. "That's impossible," Dad spluttered. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Mr. Harrison replied, pulling out a document. "Walter Barrett amended his will 6 months ago. The entire trust fund, including controlling interest in Barrett Construction, is legally transferred to Sophia Barrett." Mom's face had gone pale. James looked like he might be sick. But she'll destroy the company," Dad protested. "She knows nothing about business." Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. Actually, Mr. Barrett specifically cited Sophia's business acumen as a reason for his decision. "Would you like me to read his letter of explanation?" Without waiting for an answer, he began to read. To my family, if you're hearing this, then the truth I've kept hidden for 5 years is finally coming out. While you all dismissed Sophia's humanitarian work as a waste of money, I was watching as she built an international organization from scratch. Watching as she managed budgets, negotiated with governments, and created sustainable programs that will last generations. What you saw as charity, I saw as the most impressive business achievement in our family's history. Did you know that Sophia's Education Foundation now operates in 12 countries? That it has a higher success rate and lower overhead than any similar organization? That she turned her initial inheritance of $2 million into a $30 million operation through strategic partnerships and brilliant management? No, you didn't know, because you were too busy counting James's real estate failures and calling them learning experiences to notice real success. So yes, I'm leaving everything to my granddaughter. Not because she needs it. She's already proved she can build something meaningful on her own. I'm leaving it to her because she's the only one who understands what I built this company for. It was never about the money. It was about building something that makes the world better. Sophia understood that. The rest of you never did. Mr. Harrison looked up from the letter. Mom had her head in her hands. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. James was frantically texting, probably to his broker, trying to salvage his latest failing investment. But I sat there, remembering the last time I'd seen Grandpa. He'd visited one of our schools in Ethiopia, watching as children learned to read in a building that bore the Barrett name. Good business, he'd said quietly, builds more than just profits. I hadn't understood then, but I did now. Mr. Harrison pulled out more documents, transfer papers, board appointments, legal authorizations. But I was barely listening. I was thinking about the Barrett Construction Company's vast resources, its international connections, its potential to do more than just build luxury condos. I was thinking about schools, hospitals, sustainable housing projects. I was thinking about good business. And for the first time in years, I smiled at a family meeting. The next morning, I arrived at Barrett Construction's headquarters before sunrise. The security guard did a double take as I used Grandpa's old key card, now mine, to access the executive elevator. "Welcome, Ms. Barrett," he stammered, clearly having received the memo about the company's new owner. Grandpa's office, my office now, was exactly as he left it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city he'd helped build. Awards and photographs lined the walls, telling the story of Barrett Construction's 50-year history. But there was one photo that caught my eye. Hidden behind the more prominent displays was a small frame showing a much younger Grandpa standing in front of a modest schoolhouse. The inscription read, "First Barrett Community Project, 1973. My phone buzzed. Another frantic message from James. "This is insane. You can't run a construction company. You build schools in the middle of nowhere." I smiled, remembering the complex logistics of building those schools. The material sourcing, the local labor coordination, the government negotiations. Each project had been a masterclass in construction management, though my family had never bothered to notice. Mr. Harrison arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying more documents. "The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m., he said. "Your father is demanding an emergency vote of no confidence." "Let me guess," I replied, settling behind Grandpa's desk. "He's convinced the other board members I'm going to bankrupt the company with my charitable ideas." "Actually," Mr. Harrison smiled, "he's having trouble convincing anyone. Your grandfather spent the last 6 months showing the board your foundation's financial reports. They were quite impressed. At 8:55, I walked into the boardroom. Dad was already there, huddled with his closest allies. Mom sat in the observers section, her usual poise cracking as she watched me take Grandpa's seat at the head of the table. "This is ridiculous," Dad burst out. "She has no experience in real estate development." "No." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the presentation screen. "Let's talk about experience." The first slide appeared, a map showing my foundation's projects across 3 continents. In the past 5 years, I've overseen the construction of 47 buildings in 12 countries. Average project completion time, 4 months. Average budget variance, under 2%. Success rate, 100%. The board members leaned forward, their expressions changing from skeptical to interested. "But those were just simple buildings," James interrupted from the observers section. "Not luxury developments." I clicked to the next slide. "This is our technical training center in Kenya, built to international standards, incorporating solar power and advanced water recycling systems. Coming in 20% under budget through innovative material sourcing and local partnership programs." More slides followed. Complex construction projects, detailed financial reports, sustainability metrics that made our traditional developments look obsolete. "Barratt Construction has always been about more than just luxury condos," I continued. "At least, it was when Grandpa started it." I pulled up the photo I'd found in his office, the 1973 schoolhouse. Our company's first project wasn't a high-rise or a shopping mall. It was this, a building that changed lives. That's the legacy I plan to continue. The board sat silently, absorbing my words. Dad looked like he might explode. "But profits," he began, "will increase." I cut in. "Sustainable construction is a $400 billion market. Green building contracts have tripled in the last decade. While we've been building the same luxury condos, our competitors have been innovating." I pulled up one final slide, my 5-year plan for Barratt Construction. Traditional luxury projects balanced with sustainable development, international expansion through my foundation's established networks, government contracts for infrastructure projects. The numbers spoke for themselves. The projected revenue was double our current trajectory. "Your grandfather showed us some of this," one board member said quietly. He was quite proud. Mom stood up suddenly. "This is all very impressive, but you're forgetting something. The Barratt name means something in this city. We have a reputation to maintain." "Yes," I agreed. "A reputation for building things that last, for making a difference. Or have you forgotten what Grandpa always said about good business?" The room fell silent. Everyone in the company knew Walter Barratt's favorite saying, "Build for tomorrow, not just today." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" Dad stood up, straightening his tie. "Before we vote, I have one last thing to say." He turned to face the board. "My daughter may have impressive charts and fancy international projects, but she lacks the one thing this company needs: loyalty to the Barratt way of doing things." I thought about the children in our schools, the communities transformed by our projects, the Barratt name becoming synonymous with positive change. "You're right, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm not loyal to your way of doing things. I'm loyal to Grandpa's original vision, to building things that matter." The vote wasn't even close. The board's support was unanimous, save for Dad's single opposing vote. As the meeting adjourned, I caught Mom wiping away what looked suspiciously like a real tear. James stood in the corner, finally seeing his sister clearly for the first time. But it was Dad's expression that struck me most, a mixture of anger, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like pride. Mr. Harrison gathered his papers, pausing at my chair. Your grandfather left one more thing for you. Said to give it to you after the board meeting. He handed me an envelope, old, yellowed, sealed with the Barrett Construction logo. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photo showed Grandpa and me at one of my first school openings in Tanzania. He was looking not at the camera, but at me, his expression full of quiet pride. The note read, Dear Sophia, they called you a failure because they couldn't see what you were really building. But I saw it, and now everyone else will too. Love, Grandpa. I tucked the note into my jacket pocket, next to my heart, and turned to face my new company. It was time to start building. 1 year can change everything. I stood on the rooftop of our latest project, a mixed-use development in downtown Boston that combined luxury apartments with affordable housing and a community education center. Solar panels glinted in the morning sun, and the rooftop garden was beginning to bloom. The press is ready, my assistant Sarah announced, and your family just arrived. Today was Barrett Construction's 50th anniversary celebration, coinciding with the grand opening of what we dubbed the Barrett Legacy Project. It was also exactly 1 year since that fateful meeting where Grandpa's will had changed everything. The elevator opened, and my parents stepped out. Dad looked different, the proud swagger replaced by something more genuine. Mom's designer outfit was as perfect as ever, but her smile seemed real for once. Behind them came James, carrying his daughter Emma. My niece was wearing a Future Builder t-shirt from our new youth education program. Quite a view, Dad said quietly, looking out over the city. Your grandfather would have loved this. He was right. From up here, you could see 3 generations of Barrett buildings. The old office towers Grandpa had built, Dad's luxury condos, and now my vision of what construction could be: sustainable, inclusive, purposeful. The past year hadn't been easy. Dad had fought me at first, trying to undermine my authority with old business partners. Mom had made tearful appeals about preserving the family's reputation. James had threatened to sue, convinced I would destroy his inheritance. But then something unexpected happened. Results. Our first quarter under my leadership showed a 40% increase in profits, driven by government contracts for sustainable infrastructure projects. My international connections brought in partnerships that opened new markets. The Barrett name became associated with innovation, not just luxury. Ms. Barrett, Sarah appeared again. They're ready for the ceremony. I followed my family down to the plaza where hundreds of people had gathered. Employees, investors, community members, and a group of children from our education program, all here to celebrate what Barrett Construction had become. As I took the podium, I saw familiar faces in the crowd. The project manager who doubted me at first, but now led our sustainable building division. The local politicians who'd opposed our mixed-income housing plan until they saw the results. The international partners who'd helped us expand into green construction markets across 3 continents. 50 years ago, my grandfather built his first project, a simple schoolhouse that changed lives. Today, Barrett Construction continues that legacy on a global scale. I gestured to the building behind me. This isn't just another development. It's a blueprint for the future. Luxury apartments that subsidize affordable housing, a community center that offers technical training, solar power that reduces costs for all residents. This is what happens when we build for tomorrow, not just today. The crowd applauded, but I wasn't finished. Some of you know that a year ago, my grandfather made a controversial decision. He left his company to someone many considered a failure. I paused, meeting my parents' eyes. He saw something others didn't, that success isn't measured by how much we build, but by what we build for. Mom was crying now. Real tears this time. James held Emma tighter. In the past year, Barrett Construction has built 23 sustainable developments, 15 community centers, and partnered on infrastructure projects in 8 countries. Our profits have doubled. Our workforce has tripled. But more importantly, we've returned to our roots, building things that matter. I revealed the plaque we'd be mounting in the lobby. The Walter Barrett Community Center, it read, with Grandpa's photo and his favorite quote, "Build for tomorrow, not just today." And now, I continued, I'd like to announce our next chapter. The screens behind me lit up with renderings of our newest initiative, the Barrett Foundation for Sustainable Development, a $1 billion commitment to green building technology, community-focused construction, and technical education programs. But I won't be leading this initiative alone, I said, watching my family's expressions. Because true legacy isn't about one person's vision, it's about bringing people together. I gestured to James. My brother will head our new technical education division, using his experience to help others learn from both success and failure. James straightened, surprise and gratitude in his eyes. Emma clapped excitedly. My father will lead our community relations team, bringing decades of local knowledge to our development projects. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he nodded. And my mother will direct our philanthropic partnerships, combining her social connections with true purpose. Mom's perfect makeup was streaked with tears, but her smile was radiant. Because that's what Grandpa really left us, I concluded. Not just a company or a fortune, but a challenge. To build something bigger than ourselves. To turn success into significance. To prove that good business and good works can go hand in hand. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. I was watching my family. Really watching them. Dad's pride was no longer about status, but about impact. Mom's social circle was becoming a force for change. James was teaching Emma that true success means lifting others up. Later, as the celebration continued, I found myself back on the rooftop. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold. In the garden, Emma was helping plant new seedlings, supervised by James. Your grandfather was right, Dad said, joining me at the railing. About everything. Even about me being a failure. I teased. He shook his head. You never were. We just failed to see what you were building. Mom appeared with coffee, not her usual expensive latte, but simple cups from the community center's training cafe. To think, she mused, all those years we worried about the Barrett legacy, and you were building it all along. I took out Grandpa's old photo, the one from my first school project. Now it hung in my office alongside pictures of our new developments. A reminder that every great achievement starts with a simple decision to build something that matters. You know what Grandpa told me once, I said, watching Emma learn about rooftop gardens from her father. He said success isn't inherited, it's built. One day, one project, one life at a time. The city stretched out before us, filled with buildings bearing our name. But now they stood for something more than luxury or profit. They stood for possibility, for community, for change. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in showing them a better way to be right. And sometimes, what looks like failure to some is actually the foundation of something far greater than success. The sun set on our celebration, But I knew tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to build something meaningful. After all, that's what Barretts do. We build for tomorrow. The day I lost my job at Morris and Associates, my sister Amanda called to mock me. It wasn't surprising. She'd spent the last 15 years of our lives measuring her success against what she saw as my failures. Seriously, Thomas? Fired again? Her voice dripped with familiar contempt. What is this? The third time in 2 years. I held my phone away from my ear, staring out the window of my penthouse office in downtown Manhattan. 48 floors up, the city sprawled beneath me like a glittering chessboard. Actually, Amanda, I resigned. She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Right, because people totally resign from six-figure consulting jobs in this economy. God, you're pathetic. You can't even admit when you failed. If only she knew. The job at Morris and Associates had been a convenient cover, nothing more. A way to keep my family thinking I was just another corporate drone while I built something far bigger in the shadows. Whatever helps you sleep at night, I replied mildly, watching my reflection in the tinted glass. At 34, I looked younger than my years in my tailored charcoal suit. No one would guess I controlled a multi-billion-dollar investment empire. That was exactly how I wanted it. Well, don't expect any sympathy at my engagement party next month, Amanda continued. I won't have you embarrassing me in front of Jonathan's family. They're actually successful, unlike some people. Ah, yes, Jonathan Williams, my sister's fiancé and rising star at Peterson Global Investments. The irony almost made me laugh. I wouldn't dream of embarrassing you, I said softly. Good, and dress properly for once. No more of your discount store suits. Jonathan's father is bringing the CEO of Peterson Global. Try not to look like the family failure. I glanced down at my Tom Ford suit that cost more than Amanda's monthly salary. I'll do my best. After she hung up, I sat in silence for a long moment, thinking about the path that had led me here. 15 years of carefully crafted misdirection. Letting my family believe I was struggling while I built an empire in secret. It started in college, when I developed an algorithm for predicting market trends. While Amanda was partying her way through business school, I was quietly raising capital, making connections, building something extraordinary. By 25, I had my first billion. By 30, I had acquired Peterson Global Investments through a series of shell companies and holding firms. Not even the board knew who really owned the company. They just knew their mysterious chairman by his results. I kept working regular jobs as cover, letting my family think I was barely getting by. It was easier that way. No expectations, no demands. No one trying to leverage connections or ask for favors. But now, watching the sun set over Manhattan from my private office, I wondered if it was time for the truth to come out. Amanda's engagement party would be the perfect stage. Jonathan Williams, her beloved fiancé, reported directly to me, though he'd never met the reclusive Chairman Peterson in person. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Jonathan, "Sir," he said nervously when I answered. "I just found out. My fiancée. She's your sister?" "Indeed she is, Jonathan." I allowed myself a small smile. "Quite a coincidence, isn't it?" "I had no idea, sir. She talks about you, but she doesn't seem to know." "That's because she doesn't know. None of my family does. And I prefer to keep it that way, at least until the engagement party." "Of course, sir. But what should I do when I see you there?" I thought about Amanda's years of mockery, her constant need to prove her superiority. "Just act naturally, Jonathan. I'm sure it will be quite an interesting evening. After hanging up, I walked to the windows again. Below, the city lights were blinking to life one by one, like the pieces of an elaborate game moving into position. In the coming weeks, I watched from afar as Amanda planned her elaborate engagement party. Our parents called regularly to update me on the details, their voices tight with familiar disappointment when they asked about my job situation. You know, your sister's fiancé is very successful, Mom said during one call. Maybe he could help you find something stable. I get back a laugh. If they only knew that Jonathan's continued employment depended entirely on my goodwill. I'll keep that in mind, I said neutrally. The morning of the engagement party dawned clear and crisp. I stood in my closet, considering my options before selecting a bespoke Brioni suit in midnight blue. Might as well look the part when the truth came out. As I adjusted my Patek Philippe watch, worth more than Amanda's car, I thought about how this evening would change everything. Part of me would miss the simplicity of anonymity. But watching my sister's carefully constructed illusions shatter would be worth it. I arrived at the venue, an exclusive Manhattan restaurant, exactly on time. Amanda was holding court near the entrance, resplendent in a designer dress, Jonathan nervously at her side. "Oh, look who actually showed up," she announced as I approached. "And wearing something from Men's Warehouse. How appropriate." Several of her friends tittered. Jonathan looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "Congratulations, Amanda," I said calmly. "Jonathan?" I nodded to my employee, who could barely meet my eyes. "Still unemployed." She pressed, clearly eager to show off my failures to her new social circle. I heard Morris and associates finally got tired of carrying dead weight. I smiled, noting the growing crowd of listeners. Among them, I spotted several Peterson global executives who knew exactly who I was, their faces masks of fascination and horror as they watched the scene unfold. "Something like that," I agreed mildly. "Poor Thomas can't even keep a job," Amanda declared to her audience with a theatrical sigh. "Thank God Jonathan has actual business sense. Not everyone can be a success like him." That's when it happened. One of the Peterson Global board members approached, eager to greet what he thought was his chairman. Jonathan saw him coming and panic flashed across his face. "Chairman Peterson," he blurted out. "I had no idea you were." The champagne glass slipped from Amanda's hand, shattering on the marble floor. The room fell silent. I smiled. The game was about to begin. The silence that followed felt eternal. I could almost hear the gears turning in Amanda's head as she tried to process what she just heard. Around us, the party guests had frozen in place, champagne glasses suspended mid-sip, conversations dying mid-word. "Cheech, Chairman," Amanda stammered, her perfectly made-up face draining of color. "What is he talking about, Jonathan?" Jonathan looked like a man caught between two freight trains. His eyes darted between me and his fiancée, sweat beading on his forehead. "Amanda, I can explain." "Actually," I said quietly, "I think I should do the explaining." I turned to address the room, noting the mix of shocked faces and knowing smiles from my executives. "For those who don't know me, I'm Thomas Peterson, chairman and majority owner of Peterson Global Investments." The whispers started immediately. I saw my parents in the corner, my father's mouth hanging open, my mother gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. "That's impossible," Amanda snapped, but her voice trembled. "You're unemployed. You just got fired from Morris and Associates." "Resigned?" "Actually," I corrected her. "It was one of several cover jobs I've held over the years. Keeps things interesting. I smiled at Jonathan. You can relax now, by the way. I don't plan to fire you just because you're marrying my sister. Jonathan sagged with visible relief. Amanda's head whipped between us, her designer earrings swinging wildly. Fire him? You can't fire him. You're lying. This is just another one of your pathetic attempts to. Ms. Peterson. A distinguished older man stepped forward. Richard Blackwood, head of our board of directors. I can assure you your brother is telling the truth. He's been our chairman for the past 5 years, though this is the first time many of us have met him in person. I watched the realization settle over my sister's face like an approaching storm. 15 years of smugness, of mockery, of carefully cultivated superiority, all crumbling in an instant. But, she looked at our parents. Did you know about this? Mom stepped forward, her voice shaking. Thomas, is this true? All this time. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private, I suggested, gesturing toward a side room. Jonathan, why don't you handle the guests for a moment? My shell-shocked family followed me into an elegantly appointed private dining room. As soon as the door closed, the questions erupted. How is this possible? Why didn't you tell us? Peterson Global, but that's worth billions. I sat down calmly, adjusting my cuffs. It's actually quite a simple story. Remember that algorithm I developed in college? The one you said was a waste of time, Amanda? She flinched. I continued. It worked. Better than anyone could have imagined. I used it to start trading, built up capital, made some key investments. By 25, I had my first billion. Billion? My father choked. Currently, my personal net worth is just over 12 billion. I said quietly. Peterson Global manages assets of approximately 180 billion. My mother sank into a chair. Amanda remained standing, her engagement ring glinting as her hands twisted together. But why the fake jobs? Why let us think you were struggling? I leaned back, studying my sister. Do you remember what you said when I tried to show you my early market predictions? Called it cute, that I thought I could compete with real business people. She flushed. That was years ago. 15 years, to be exact. The same day, I decided to build everything in secret. No pressure, no expectations. No family members asking for favors or trying to leverage connections. Just pure merit. We wouldn't have. My father started. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Like you didn't use Amanda's connections to try to get contracts for your consulting firm. Like Mom didn't ask Amanda to help cousin Peter get an interview at her company. They had the grace to look embarrassed. But all those times we tried to help you, my mother said softly. The job referrals, the career advice, the constant criticism, I added. The comparisons to Amanda's success, the jokes at family gatherings. I kept my voice level, but years of suppressed feelings were rising to the surface. Amanda sank into a chair, her perfect posture crumbling. Oh God, she whispered. All those things I said to you, about being a failure, about not measuring up. While I was signing your fiancé's paychecks, I finished for her. Ironic, isn't it? A knock at the door interrupted us. Jonathan poked his head in, looking uncertain. Sir, I mean Thomas. Some of the board members are asking. Of course, I stood up. We should rejoin the party. I believe there's an engagement to celebrate. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Amanda? That discount store suit you mocked earlier? It's brownie. Costs more than your car. The rest of the evening was a blur of revelations and reactions. I watched as my sister struggled to adjust her worldview, as my parents grappled with their new reality. The Peterson global executives, who'd long known me only as a voice on the phone or a signature on documents, now clustered around, eager to finally meet their mysterious chairman. Later, as the party was winding down, Amanda approached me at the bar. Her makeup was slightly smeared, her confident facade cracked. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why reveal everything at my engagement party?" I sipped my scotch, considering, because it was time, because I'm tired of living a double life, and because I looked at her directly. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come at our moments of greatest pride. She flinched, but nodded slowly. I deserve that. All these years, I've been so superior, condescending, cruel. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I'm truly sorry." I studied my sister, seeing for the first time in years the girl who used to be my best friend before success and rivalry drove us apart. "The question is, Amanda, what happens now?" She looked at me uncertainly. "What do you mean?" "Now that the truth is out, now that you know your failure brother is actually one of the most powerful men in global finance, now that your entire perception of our relationship has been turned upside down, what happens next?" Her answer would determine a lot about our future. I waited, watching emotions play across her face as she grappled with 15 years of shattered assumptions and the dawning reality of our new dynamic. The world I'd built in secret was now fully exposed. The carefully maintained walls between my two lives had crumbled. As I waited for my sister's response, I wondered if revealing the truth would heal our family's wounds or only deepen them. Either way, there was no going back now. The weeks following the engagement party were a study in chaos theory, how one revelation could spiral out into countless unforeseen consequences. The story of the mysterious Chairman Peterson revealing himself at his sister's engagement party leaked to the financial press within days. Our family's photo appeared in the Wall Street Journal, my sister's shocked face immortalized for the business world to see. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who'd suddenly remembered how close we used to be. Distant cousins pitched business ideas. Old friends from high school resurfaced with investment opportunities. Even my third-grade teacher somehow got my number, wondering if I remembered her special influence on my success. But it was the changing dynamic with my immediate family that proved most fascinating. My father, ever the pragmatist, switched from disappointment to pride so quickly it gave me whiplash. "I always knew you had potential, son," he said over lunch at his favorite diner, the same one where he'd lectured me about financial responsibility just months earlier. It was just a matter of time. I stirred my coffee, remembering his very different words from Christmas. "Really?" "Because I distinctly remember you calling my career a testament to wasted education last December." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was wrong, obviously very wrong. But you have to understand, seeing you bounce from job to job, never seeming to settle. Those jobs were covers to Dad, carefully chosen positions that wouldn't draw attention while I built something bigger. Every failure was calculated." "But why?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "Why hide your success from us, from your family?" I looked at him steadily, because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits. No family connections, no expectations, no pressure, just me, my ideas, and the market. "And no trust in your family to handle the truth," he added quietly. "Can you blame me?" I gestured around the diner. Look how everyone's acting now that they know. Even you, Dad. Would you be sitting here, proud of my choices, if I was still just a mid-level consultant getting fired every few years? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. My mother took a different approach. She showed up at my office, my real office, unannounced one afternoon, somehow talking her way past 3 layers of security. "This is where you've been all along?" she asked, taking in the panoramic view of Manhattan. "While we thought you were struggling." "Mom." "No, let me finish." She turned from the windows, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Do you know how many nights I lay awake worrying about you? Wondering if you'd ever find your path, if you'd ever be okay." "I was more than okay," I said softly. "Yes, you were building an empire, in secret, while letting your mother think you were barely getting by." Her voice cracked. "Was it worth it? Was proving your point worth all the pain you caused?" That hit home. I'd spent so many years focused on maintaining my cover, on building something independently, that I'd never fully considered the emotional cost to others, especially to her. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "Not for building this my way, but for hurting you. That was never my intention." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I suppose I understand. After how we compared you to Amanda all those years, how we pushed and criticized, you wanted to prove yourself without our interference. Something like that. Well," she straightened her shoulders, "I hope you've proved whatever you needed to prove, because I expect to see my son at family dinners from now on. Your real self, not some carefully constructed facade." I smiled. "Yes, Mom." But it was Amanda who surprised me most. A week after the party, she asked to meet at a small coffee shop. Not the kind of upscale venue she usually preferred. "I'd been doing a lot of thinking," she said, staring into her untouched latte, "about how I treated you. About why I felt the need to constantly remind me of your success and my apparent failure." She winced. "Yes, that." She took a deep breath. "I think I was scared. That wasn't what I expected." "Scared? Of what?" "Of not being enough. Of not living up to expectations. Mom and Dad always pushed us to be successful, and somewhere along the way, I decided that meant I had to be better than you. Had to prove myself by comparison." She laughed bitterly. "And all this time, you were so far ahead of me, I couldn't even see it." "Success isn't a competition, Amanda," says the secret billionaire, she shot back, but there was no malice in it. "God, do you know how stupid I feel? All those times I mocked your career, your clothes, your life. You could have bought and sold my company 100 times over. That was never the point." "Then what was the point, Thomas? Help me understand." I considered carefully. "Freedom," I said finally. "The freedom to succeed or fail on my own terms. To build something without family pressure or expectations. To know that every step forward was because of my own efforts, not our name or connections." "And what about now? Now that everyone knows?" "Now," I smiled slightly, "now I do whatever I want. Starting with fixing some things I've been neglecting." The next month proved transformative. I established a family foundation, not to hand out money, but to help fund entrepreneurial ventures within the family, properly vetted ones with solid business plans. Mom joined the board, proving surprisingly astute at evaluating proposals. Dad's consulting firm suddenly found itself with several major contracts, though I made sure he never knew they came through my connections. He didn't need to know. The quality of his work spoke for itself, once given the opportunity. As for Amanda and Jonathan, their wedding plans shifted from merely expensive to genuinely meaningful. Amanda insisted on scaling back the extravagance, focusing instead on creating something more personal. "I've had enough of showing off," she told me. "Time to focus on what really matters." Jonathan proved himself worthy of both his position and my sister, throwing himself into new projects with renewed confidence now that he no longer had to navigate the complex waters of our family secret. The press eventually moved on to newer stories. The flood of long-lost relatives slowed to a trickle. Life found a new normal, though not the one I'd maintained for so many years. 6 months after the engagement party, we had our first real family dinner in years. No pretense, no hidden agendas, no carefully maintained facades. Just family, finally seeing each other clearly. "You know," Amanda said as we lingered over dessert, "I never did thank you properly." "For what?" "For teaching me the most expensive lesson of my life." She smiled. "Never judge someone's worth by the suit they're wearing, even if it looks like it's from Men's Warehouse." I laughed, especially then. Later that night, standing in my office overlooking the city, I thought about the path that had led here. The years of secrecy, the careful misdirection, the calculated failures, all to build something truly my own. Had it been worth it? The lying, the hidden successes, the pain it caused my family? Looking at where we were now, Mom and Dad proud without being overbearing, Amanda humbled but happier, our family bond stronger for having been tested, I thought maybe it had. Sometimes the hardest lessons come wrapped in the most expensive packages. Sometimes success isn't about proving your worth to others, but about proving it to yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's growth. I picked up my phone and texted Amanda, "Dinner next week? My treat." Her response came quickly, "Only if you wear something from Men's Warehouse, for old time's sake." I smiled. Some things had changed completely, while others had just changed form. But this time, we were all in on the joke, and that made all the difference.